It's very important for anyone seeking to devote their lives to practice. It's very important that they settle in the best possible way the issue of dependence. So all living beings, without exception, live dependent on some source of sustenance. It's not optional. It's one of those things that no living creature can survive without. Of course, in the case of animals, it's just basically food and safety. In the case of human, it's far more complex than that. But the thing about papaja or going forth is that we try to make it as much simple as possible by limiting our needs to the bare minimum. And by doing so, and this also minimize our needs and allow us to live carefree, not really concerned about how we're going to provide for ourselves. The word bhikkhu really means mendicant, someone who lives leading a frugal kind of life and begs for food, has very little needs. So I really believe this is possible to do this in our present time as well. It's not impossible for one who is really serious about practice, who really wants to devote all his time to practice, to live with nothing, basically. We have just the four requisites. Otherwise, it will certainly be difficult. There will always be the heaviness and the burden of making money or finding a job and maintaining a house in which one to live, buying food, transportation, all sorts of everyday life difficulties, needs and requirements. Everything needs money and so forth, and that makes that will take a lot of time in order to provide for oneself in such a way. It always takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, and it's a lot of hassle also because the options are limited. If you want to make money, there are very limited options of how to do that nowadays. And basically, you need to find a job within a certain specific economic system. And I think that the majority of people are doing such jobs that they don't really like. It's just things that they have to do in order to get paid in the every month and sustain themselves. There are very rare occasions when I meet people who are really in love with what they're doing as a job and at the same time able to get any sufficient money out of that. So that's always going to be a problem. And there are also, of course, the issues of what kind of job is it, or whether it is compatible with Dhamma or Dhamma practice or not. There are such jobs which require all sorts of behavioral and problematic kind of interaction with others, or commercial things and things which are basically based on convincing people that they need to buy things which they really don't need to buy at all. All that sort of thing. It is it's a big hassle. This is really something that demonstrates the use and the usefulness of going forth. in a monastic tradition, in a country where one will be able to have all the basic needs without having to worry so much. And of course, in that case, there will arise other kinds of difficulties. Basically, psychological is about being able to live without too many needs. That's not easy at all. It's easy to say like that. It's easy to speak about it like that, but to experience that in actuality is a different story. But in the end, the whole issue is determined by the extent by which one is serious and one is devoted to practice. And the more one is so serious and devoted, the more one will be able to live with little and ask for little according to what is allowed. Having said that, it's yet not impossible for one to practice and lead a busy kind of have a professional career somewhere or do some jobs and practice at the same time. It's not impossible, and just the problem is that one cannot really. It's really difficult to devote oneself completely to practice in that way, because not only because of the time that this consumes, but also because of the kind of stress and the kind of mental activity that one is exposed to during the work. That usually leaves an impact. It has an influence on the mind, and in that case, a practitioner will need to learn how to handle that. And how to manage the practice with the presence of this kind of stress and this kind of everyday effort that nearly has nothing to do with Dhamma. Unless it is a job that one really, probably every job one can attend to in such a way where one is practicing during work. If that's at all possible. It's not so easy, but it is actually what one does as a devoted practitioner, whether going forth or still a lay person. It is to attempt and try the best possible way to maintain sila, samadhi, panya at all times, in all situations, in all circumstances. So it's possible to practice during work as well. It's not impossible, but I can understand that it's probably quite difficult and demanding. In all cases, as I said at the beginning, we all live dependent on some source of sustenance. All of us. No living creature can live completely independently. Now, even such animals which live in the forest or in the mountains, they really have to do a lot of effort every day to find food. So that certainly is a kind of independence. Nevertheless, that kind of independence requires a lot of effort and requires a lot of time spent chasing ahara or food. So you are independent, but you're losing a lot of time and doing a lot of effort pursuing things other than what should be pursued as a Dhamma practitioner. So the ideal situation is that such things as food, shelter, clothes, medicine, that are 4 requisites that are provided whenever needed, and without having to make too much effort to get them, without having to suffer too much in getting them. And that is the minimal degree of dependence that is ideal for a Buddhist practitioner. This creates a lot of space, a lot of free time during the day for one to devote oneself completely to practice. And it really works. It works. So all other options are going to be inferior to that. Nevertheless, it's still possible to pursue these things, to pursue practice while one is working or otherwise providing for oneself. Of course, this issue involves a certain degree of uneasiness, especially in certain cultures where people are expected to be independent and to work and to provide for themselves. Of course, this is a very mundane idea of independence, and it's not really independence. It's just that instead of being a mendicant, for example, who's begging for food every day, you have to go to work 8 hours or so a day and to get your salary in the end. And that's also, I think, is a very intense, it's a very extreme kind of dependence. That's not independence. That's that you live all your life dependent on this work, on this job, in order to get the salary, in order to be able to live and provide for yourself and others. So that's a very, very intense form of dependency. It's far more than what a mendicant experiences. You just go with an alms bowl for an hour or so, and that's it. That's it for the day. But the case is even much more complicated and much more demanding than that in the case of secular people or mundane people. But in the end, it's very important for one to understand that dependency is nearly not optional. There is always some kind of dependency wherever we'll go, whatever circumstances we can seek to create around ourselves in order to live in the easiest possible way. There will always be one kind of dependency or another. Unless, of course, one is so extremely rich and does no longer need anything or anybody. But that's of course an exception. The rule is that most people will need to find some kind of support. And that's something that is very humbling when you accept it, when you think about it and accept it and realize that there is no escape from this. It is really humbling, and it is something that demonstrates to us very clearly how much conditioned we are, how much dependent we are, how much unfree we are. And the wisdom here, in my view, is that one should stop battling with this. One should stop complaining about this, especially recognizing that there is no escape from it. It's quite humbling. It's not easy, but that's the truth. That's the reality, and it applies to everyone. It's not personal. It's not because I'm poor or because I cannot do for myself or I'm not clever. Mostly everyone, even rich people, live in dependency on the source of their richness, whatever it may be. So that is important to contemplate. It's an element of dukkha, if you think about it. It's some kind of manifestation of dukkha, that we are never truly free, we are never truly independent. Nothing is, and that we are part of this. And at the same time, this gives rise to mental states of appreciation and gratitude for all the things that we already have, or that we have access to, and which are allowing us to pursue our practice in peace or in the best possible way. It's really this contemplation and this realization allow us to develop these states of mind. They are really, I think, essential part of the renunciate life, being appreciative, having this kind of sincere gratitude for even the littlest things that one receives, the support that one gets. And that contributes directly to one's feeling of happiness or the sweetness of renunciation. In an alms round, when I just get an avocado, I'm extremely happy. I'm jubilant. So it becomes a part of the renunciate experience is that you're able to really enjoy all these little simple things. And I think this is a very distinct characteristic of renunciate life. And it's very difficult to experience that without going forth, or without living as a mendicant with the one goes forth in a monastic tradition or not, just living dependent on the generosity of others and the support of others. It's not easy, but at the same time, it has its own spiritual rewards. So these are kinds of like guidelines or general ideas about the issue of dependence, and it is quite an important issue, and it's important to think about it a lot and to contemplate its reality, to contemplate the how does it work and how does it affect one's life, especially given that there is no time really. We don't have a lot of time to waste in this life. It's so fleeting, it's so quick, and death is always so near. And it's one of the things that could really slow down one's progress so much, even in a case where one could make much faster progress. The issue of dependency, if it's not settled, if it's not clear in the mind, if one is not able to make the right decisions about it, and one could go much slower than one could. It could be an issue that causes a lot of depression or dissatisfaction in the path of practice, particularly for monastics, but also for lay people. So it could be a very serious hindrance if one is not able to think about it and understand it with wisdom. And to make decisions, to make such changes in one's life where the source of support will be wholesome, will be moral, will be not problematic with one's sense of conscience, and at the same time also practically working, efficient. You're not getting too much hungry, or you're not living in a state of deprivation that is preventing you from practice. And this is the issue about dependency, is that, and the Buddha speaks a lot about this, that it has to provide for one sufficiently, giving the purpose or the goal of practice. Whenever we're thinking about dependence, we're thinking about how does that fit with my practice? How does it help? How does it reinforce my practice? So all our contemplations and all our decisions about this issue are based on, or having in mind, the goal of practice and the purpose of practice. And for practice one needs little, really. One needs just a peaceful place, a silent place, and food, basically. It's really quite simple, what one really needs for practice. So it's quite possible. It's not impossible to, in any circumstance, whether in a renunciate, or monastic, or lay, it's quite possible to I believe, for one with attention and with wisdom to discover what works best for oneself, and to make an effort and do something to change one's life in such a way as to ensure that the circumstances required for a moral and a wholesome and an efficient form of dependency is available. and then make use of the little time that we have here. That's the whole point.